ॐ त्वबकथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded by M. Sri Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is telling the story of how you should tackle people who are mischievous, wicked, and potentially harmful. The question was asked, Mahashaya, যদি দুষ্ট লোকে অনিষ্ট করতে আসে বা অনিষ্ট করে তাহলে কি চুপ করে থাকা উচিত? If wicked people come and harm us or tend to harm us, what should we do? Should we simply keep quiet or retaliate? Then he gives a beautiful story in reply. There is a snake which is very poisonous, and everybody was terribly afraid of the snake. One brahmachari, a holy man, was walking along the field. The little children who were cowherds rushed to this holy man and said, "Sir, please don't go that way. There's a terribly poisonous snake that way." Then he said, "Don't worry, I know some mantras. I will try to tame that snake, charm that snake into calmness and non-violence." So when the snake came to him, rushing to harm him, the brahmachari, the holy man, chanted some mantras, sprinkled some water on the snake, and the snake became extremely calm, like an earthworm. Then he gave a mantra to the snake and said, "Chant this mantra. You will develop devotion to God and don't harm anybody." And he went away. After some time, the boys came and saw the snake had become absolutely calm, non-violent, not harming anybody. They went on playing with that snake and they found the snake is not reacting at all. Then they started harming the snake. One of them took the snake by the tail and then whirled it round and dashed it on the ground and went away. The snake became unconscious, vomited blood, and they thought the snake is dead. But the snake was not dead because the power of the mantra will not make it die so easily. It slowly crawled to its hole, and thereafter it never came out during daytime. Only in the night when nobody was around, it used to come out for some food. From then on, it started eating extremely sattvic, harmless food like mud, leaves, some fruits and so on, which are naturally fallen down to the ground. Several months passed. The brahmachari again passed that way and inquired about the snake. The little children said, "Sir, that the snake is dead." The brahmachari said, "It can't be, because the power of the mantra which I have given it will not make it die so easily." He moved towards that hole and called out the snake. After repeated calling, the snake came out, could not even recognize the brahmachari, could not remember anything. Then the brahmachari revived its memory and said, "How are you? Why are you in such a bad shape?" It became emaciated, half dead, as it were. Then it could not even remember the kind of harm the boys had done to it. It had completely forgiven those boys who harmed it. And after a lot of effort, the snake remembered how the boys took it by the tail and whirled and smashed it to the ground. Then he said, "Oh, after all, they are children, they are boys, they do not know the kind of change which has come over me after receiving mantra from you. I have become very saintly now. I have completely given up harming anybody. How will they know?" Then the holy man told the snake, ব্রহ্মচারী বললে, ছি, তুই এত বোকা, আপনাকে রক্ষা করতে জানিস না? আমি কামড়াতে বারণ করেছি, ফোঁস করতে নয়। ফোঁস করে তাদের ভয় দেখালে ভয় দেখাস নাই কেন? দুষ্টু লোকের কাছে ফোঁস করতে হয়, ভয় দেখাতে হয় পাছে অনিষ্ট করে। তাদের গায়ে বিষ ঢালতে নাই, অনিষ্ট করতে নাই। This is a great lesson for those of us who are living in society, interacting with people, good, bad, indifferent, wicked people, violent people, harmful people. So what do we do? The brahmachari told the snake, "Fai aparnyuchi, you are such a stupid fellow. I told you not to harm anybody, not to bite anybody. I never forbade hissing. You should have hissed when they came. If you have raised your hood and started hissing violently, they would have, out of fear, they would have run away. And then you would have been safe. So never bite but hiss." This is the lesson for people in society to protect themselves, Atma Raksha, against wicked people who are likely to harm and do harm. Such a practical lesson which Ramakrishna gives here. In the case of extraordinary saints and sannyasins, Paramahamsas, who live away from society, even this is not allowed. But we need not discuss this very special class separately, because very, very few, and those who cut themselves off completely from society. For such people, even hissing is not allowed. They will not try to protect themselves. God protects them. Swami Vivekananda was once asked by somebody, if strong people oppress the weak, then what do we do? Thrash the strong, of course, he said. On another occasion he was asked, if wicked people come to harm us, then what should we do? Should we retaliate? Or should we keep quiet? He said, non-resistance, non-retaliation for sannyasins, self-defense for the householder. All of us are householders in a sense because we live and interact with society. We live in society, we interact with the society, and therefore, in a sense, every one of us is a householder. In the present day, nobody can move away from society anywhere. Even if you go to the caves of the Himalayas, there is some communication, there is internet facility, there are Android phones. You can't just move away from society, even in the remotest cave of a Himalaya. So, the question of people moving away from society and getting absorbed in God is very rare, and such people need not particularly be discussed. They are being specially protected by the Divine Lord, and they do not even attempt to protect themselves. It is just like a child is being protected by the mother or by the father. A child does not know how to protect itself. It only cries to the parents. In exactly the same way, people who are highly evolved, who live in God consciousness all the time, they simply are in touch with God and God protects them. Great examples in the Puranas are Prahalada, how much of torture he was subjected to by his demonic father Hiranyakashipu. How Narayana protected him at every stage. Finally, he assumed the form of man-lion, Narasimha, and tore the wicked Rakshasa, Hiranyakashipu, into pieces. Then take the case of Draupadi, the poor lady, how she was subjected to the most vulgar humiliation by Dushasana and Duryodhana in the presence of the 5 husbands, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and in the presence of greatly evolved souls, God men like Bhishma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, and warriors like Karna. In a huge assembly, Dushasana was trying to disrobe and humiliate her. She was crying, calling upon all the people in the assembly, calling upon all the gods on earth, trying to protect herself. She couldn't. Finally, she called upon Krishna. Oh Krishna, please save me. Bho Krishna Achyuta Bho Pandavanam Sakhe Kvasi Suyodhanadapahatam Bho Rakshama Maturam Ityukto Kshaya Vastra Samsritatanum Yopalayad Draupadim Artratranaparayana Bhagavan Narayano Me Gatihi. Bho Krishna Achyuta Bho Kripalaya Hare Bho Pandavanam Sakhe. Oh Krishna, oh the friend of the Pandavas, oh Gopala, oh Achyuta, Kvasi, where are you? Where are you? Please save me from these demonic people. She was so pure, so elevated, so pure-hearted. She could not even utter the word Duryodhana. Dur word she could not utter. She just Suyodhana Dapagata. Suyodhana. She could not even utter the word Duryodhana. Then infinite cloth was given to her by Sri Krishna. Dushasana is pulling the cloth covering her body. Endlessly cloth went on coming by the magic, by the grace of Sri Krishna. That is the protective power of the divine if you call on him with a longing heart. These are not stories. Remember, these are not simple imaginations. These are the ideals placed before us in the form of Purana so that we can simulate them, follow these examples, and develop the dependence on God. It is possible to depend on God in howsoever a small fashion. Just a little you depend. The more and more you depend on Him, the more you feel greatly protected. He exists and He protects you. Take the story in the Bhagavatam of a helpless elephant, Gajendra. This is a story of Gajendra Moksha. How the Lord gave moksha, liberation, to even an animal, subhuman species like an elephant. This elephant is very devoted to the Lord Narayana. When he went for a bath in a river, a crocodile caught it. A crocodile with powerful teeth, sharp, piercing, caught hold of the feet of this elephant and started dragging it. Profuse bleeding started. Terrible pain. It could not release itself from the clutches of this terrible crocodile. Started bleating, crying, "Oh Narayana." Before that, he thought he will call upon some smaller gods. Why trouble Narayana for this? So many gods. Indra, Varuna, Yama, Vayu. One by one, all the gods he was calling. Nobody came to the rescue. Nobody could have the power to save it. Then when the elephant took a small flower, lotus flower, floating on the river and took in its trunk, raised the trunk and then started praying intensely, the Lord came rushing on the Garuda Vahana and with his chakra cut to pieces the crocodile and saved this elephant. Nakragrasta padam samudhrutagaram brahmadayo bhosuraha palyantamiti dinavakya karinam deveshva shakteshu yaha ma shocheti raraksha-nakrahananam chakrayudha sridharaha artratrana-parayanassa bhagavan narayano me gati. The Artratrana Narayana Stotram, it is attributed to Shankara. Some people say it is Kuresha's composition. Be that as it may, look at the sentiment. Whenever you are in trouble, call upon Narayana. He is the one savior who is definite to save you. Artratrana parayanassa bhagavan narayano me gatihi. He is the only gati, he is the only refuge for artratrana. Artha, affliction, sorrow, calamity. Trana, saving. In the very first stanza he asks, you say Narayana alone can save? Proof? Tell me. Do you have any witnesses? Yes, I have 6 witnesses arrayed before me. Prahaladascha vibhishanascha karirat panchalya halya dhruva. Prahalada, Vibhishana, whom the Lord gave refuge. When Vibhishana came to take refuge in Ramachandra, after repeatedly arguing and trying to convince his elder brother Ravana, please don't follow this path of evil, path of sin. Go and surrender to Ramachandra, make peace with him, and give back Sita Devi. Ravana was so arrogant, so voluptuous, so full of pride. He wanted to drive away his own brother. He had no other way except to run to Ramachandra for support and for refuge. The famous story in the Ramayana, he is coming through Akasha Marga in the heavenly path, and Rama said, stay there. I have to discuss with my council of advisors to find out whether you can be admitted at all. He quickly called a council of advisors and asked them what we should do now. Should we accept him in our fold? One by one, many people had many different opinions. Finally, the Buddhimatam Varishtham, the greatest of wise people, Mahavir Hanuman, he said, "O Rama, even if Ravana comes and asks for refuge, you have no choice except to grant him refuge, because you have incarnated in this avatara only to give refuge to people. That is your vrata, that is your vow. You have to give refuge and grant fearlessness to people, abhaya." Then the famous statement, declaration, pratishruti, the promise of the Lord. Sakrideva prapannaya tavasmi diyachate abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadam yetad vratam mama. Etad mama vratam, this is my vrata. This is my vow. This is the vrata with which I have incarnated myself in a human body. What is that? Sakrideva prapannaya tavasmiti achate. Sakridev, even once, if a person who has taken refuge in me, prapannaya, and comes and tells me even once, tavasmi, I am yours, I take refuge in me, in you, abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami. This is one of the most profound statements in our scriptures. Sannyasis have been mandated by the sannyasa vrata to give abhaya to all creatures. Abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami. So I give refuge to all people. Because all of them are my own self. Atmopamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadi va dukkham sayogi paramo mataha. Bhagavad Gita. Atmopamyena sarvatra. A person who sees all the people around him as his own self multiplied. Samam pashyati, he has samatva buddhi, he has equanimity. He doesn't have any sense of high or low. Such a person is a supreme yogi. So these are profound statements in our scriptures, the Gita and the Upanishads and the Ramayana, Mahabharata. Abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami. So he is the only refuge. So if you have risen to that state of mind, when you are absorbed in God, when you feel the protective power of God pulsating in your consciousness all the time, then you need not try to protect yourself at all. God protects you. But till you have reached that stage, when you are living in society with all kinds of people, wicked people, good people, indifferent people, of various shades of goodness and wickedness, you have to be on your guard all the time for self-protection, self-defense, without harming anybody. India has been surviving millennia upon millennia on this one principle. The whole country became a follower of the Ahimsa path, thanks to Ashoka. Then we lost our self-defense that cost us very heavily. We had to be under subjugation for 1000 years. So Swami Vivekananda therefore said, self-defense for the householder and non-resistance for a sannyasin. So here Ramakrishna is teaching us through this beautiful story, you have to protect yourself. The brahmachari told the snake, you stupid fellow, you fool, I told you not to harm anybody. That does not mean that you should not protect yourself by hissing. Hiss, but not bite. That is the mantra, that is the formula of this story. ईश्वरेर सृष्टिते नाना रकम जीव जंतु गाछपाला आछे ज्ञानोदयेर मध्य जानवरेर मध्य भालो मंदो सब आछे बाघेर मतो हिंस्र जंतु आछे गाछेर मध्य अमृतेर न्याय फल हय एमन आछे आबार विष फलो आछे तेमनि मानुषेर मध्य भालो आछे मंदो आछे साधु आछे असाधु आछे संसारी जीव आछे आबार भक्त आछे. So simple, so straightforward, so practical, but tuned to the highest. That is the beauty of this Kathamrita. As it is with Srimad Bhagavad Gita, both of them the voice of God. In the creation of God, Ishvara Srishtite, Nana Rakam Jeev Jantu. So many varieties of beings are there. Gach Pala Ache. Vegetation, plantation, animals, plants. Varieties are there. What are they? Janvarer madhye bhalamando ache. Among the animals, you have violent himsra jantu, bagher matan. Like the tiger, you have terrible, violent creatures. Gacher madhye amrter nyay phal amon ache. Certain trees give such sweet, wonderful fruits, like grape, for example, like mango, for example. They give such sweet, wonderful, juicy fruits. Abar vish phalo ache. Again, you have poisonous fruits coming in certain trees. Dangerous to eat them. Manusher madhye temni bhalo ache, mando ache, sadhu ache, asadhu ache. Among human beings, there are varieties of people, those who are holy, pure, elevated, and there is impure, violent, wicked. Samsari jeev ache, abar bhakto ache. They are worldly people and they are greatly devoted to God, who are devotees of God. So different varieties of people exist in God's creation. This is something you have to reckon with. Do not imagine that a time will come all evil will be eliminated, only goodness will remain and prevail. It is not possible, it just can't happen. The whole of society, the world of Maya is a mixture of good and evil. This is the definition of Maya. Swami Vivekananda says it is a mixture of good and evil, mixture of existence and non-existence, mixture of the pairs of opposites, Sukha Dukkha, Shit Ushna, all the Dvandva, as we call it in Vedanta, the pairs of opposites, coexist. You become terribly angry at one time and the next time you feel so calm. The mind also oscillates. You become so depressed sometimes and suddenly you become so elevated, so joyful. It's terribly hot In summer, in tropical climate, it's terribly hot. And the high humidity, you sweat all the time. And after some time, it comes rains, and then you have the winter, cold season. It's so cold. So continuously the whole thing is fluctuating, moving from one extreme to the other extreme. Life itself is a movement, an oscillation between sorrow on the one hand and joy on the other. As life is defined so beautifully in a small sentence, life is a pendulum oscillating between a smile and a tear. You shed tears of sorrow, and again there is an oscillation to the other side. You have so much of smile, joyful, ecstatic smile. This is life. So Sri Ramakrishna is picturing the entire gamut of existence. So you have all these pairs of opposites. And among jivas, human beings are such variety. Bhakto ache, sadhu ache, ashadhu ache, samsari jiva ache. Those are intensely worldly. According to Sri Ramakrishna, worldliness consists of kamani kanchana, lust and greed. A person who cannot get rid of the bondage of flesh, the attraction of flesh, Kamini. Kamini does not mean only a woman. It means a seductress, the seductive aspect of woman. In the case of Purusha, men, or in the case of men, it is the other way. For women it is men, and for men it is women. That's how the world is constituted. Purusha and Prakriti are the two poles which naturally get attracted to each other. That's how the world is constituted. And all the problems in life arise mostly from this peculiar attraction which male and female feel for each other, because of which man becomes deluded, infatuated, and treads the path of sin. And wealth, money, kanchana, gold. The whole of Maya, the world of relativity, the world of delusion, the world of confusion, is the world of kamini kanchana, lust and greed. And then Sri Ramakrishna goes on now to give the varieties of different kinds of human beings that we have. So look at the analysis, the classification, and the master mind of Sri Ramakrishna, based on such keen, powerful observation of the world, although he was all the time in samadhi, and understanding of the world, classifying people and putting them in their correct place and perspective. Jeev Char Prakar. He classifies beings, human beings, into 4 kinds. Classification. This is the genius for classification of all great Indian minds, the rishis particularly. The 3 fundamental principles on which science has grown over millennia, and spiritual and secular wisdom has also developed over millennia in India. The 3 principles are: 1, the classification principle; 2, the generalization principle; 3, the unification principle. Now, the classification principle in India, ancient India, our rishis classified everything. Science also grew, developed through classification. when so many elements came to be discovered, hydrogen, helium, and so on, we had almost 92 elements at one time, and people are asking, is it possible to classify them? There should be some pigeonholing and classification, which is what we do in work, in the office, when we document things either on a computer in soft copy or a hard copy. We create so many files. In the computer, create folders. One folder consisting of this particular subject, another folder consisting of a different subject, and so on. So my documents in the computer, if you click in Word, then you get so many folders. Within the folders, you have certain subfolders. You go on classifying so that you can quickly locate any file that you need. And masterminds create folders in their own minds and brains. They keep in their brains in several folders and quickly retrieve. The whole of management science is storage and retrieval of information, and classification, through classification and through finding the relationship between the various classified information and data. How do you relate them? When so many elements came to be discovered, the human mind was asking, the scientific mind was asking, can you classify them properly? The classification of elements resulted in two great scientists. One is called Mendeleev, the other is Lothar Meyer. They created this periodic table of elements. They were put in periods and groups according to the property that they possessed. And there is a group in which inert gases are put. Helium, neon, and so on. These inert gases are gases which do not interact with anything. They can't form compounds. Interaction with other elements to form compounds is a fundamental characteristic of any element. You pair with people, you interact with people, in the human life also, in society, you form pairs. You have a relational understanding with people. The moment you are born, you are related to your parents, father, mother. When you slowly grow, then you have a sister and a brother. And the moment you talk about your father and mother, father's father, father's mother, and mother's father and mother's mother, grandparents on both sides. Then you have the brothers and sisters of your father and mother, uncles, aunts, their children. Immediately you become related to a few hundred people. When you grow up, you have friends with which you are related. And when you marry, you immediately get related to the same relationship which you had before marriage with an entirely new group of people with only addition of in-law. You have a father and then you get a father-in-law. You have a mother, then you get a mother-in-law. You have a brother, you have a brother-in-law. You have a sister, you get a sister-in-law, and so on. So you create an entirely new set of relationships till you are related to hundreds of people in this world. And you are related to your pets, the dog or the cat which you have at house. And you have servants. In the office you have friends, your boss, your subordinate, your friends. And if you're a teacher, you have students. And the whole of the animal kingdom, the cows and the dogs and various animals, and plantation, the trees, the flowers, so, and the rivers, the water bodies. So you are in the midst of a huge collection of human beings, subhuman beings, animals, plants, water bodies, with whom you are related. And you keep moving in this relationship, which is called life. Life is defined as a movement in a relationship. And if you live alone, unrelated to anybody, although physically you have to be related, mentally you have to be related, but psychologically, deep within, you may completely remain isolated, not emotionally dependent on anything. A relationship involves dependence, and dependence is misery. So you mentally, psychologically, spiritually isolate yourself totally, although you live in a world as if you are related. It's called anasakti, detachment, non-attachment. Ultimately, the spiritual complete detachment called kaivalya, ekalatva, the ekatva, kevalatva. So you remain alone. It is not loneliness, it is aloneness. I just remain alone and I'm intensely happy. It's called Atma Rama. So such a person is related to everything through love, through harmony, through affection, through unselfishness. But he doesn't carry any bondage with him. That is the highest state which has been conceived. So they classify, just like a periodic table, you classify. What are the different human aspirations? What do we seek in life? Suppose I ask you, what do we want in life? How many wants do you have in life? The answer will be, innumerable wants. How many wants? I want this, I want that. Can you classify them? Our ancients did it. Look at the genius of the ancient rishis. They said, we'll classify them, and they came up with 4 different groups of aspirations. They are called Chaturvidha Purushartha. Purusha means a human being, not a male person only. A human being, Artha, seeking. Prarthita, Purushena, Arthita, Athava Prarthita is Purushartha. That which is sought by human beings. What are they? Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Everybody has desires, Kama. How many hundreds of desires we have. And for the fulfillment of these desires, we definitely need Artha, money. So these are the most fundamental aspiration of seeking, Artha and Kama. But my pursuit of Artha and Kama has to be regulated by Dharma. Dharma is the principle of sacrifice, unselfishness, purity, by which I don't only seek my own welfare, I see to it that my seeking my welfare does not impinge upon or encroach upon or adversely affect somebody else's seeking his or her welfare. I walk along the street, I say I have freedom to walk in the street, but your freedom has to be circumscribed by the freedom of the other person who also is walking in the street. So you should not clash with each other. I should sacrifice my freedom so that the other people's freedom is also protected. This is called democracy. This is called dharma, the principle of sacrifice. I should sacrifice my own little self-interest for the sake of the collective, the whole. There is an interesting incident which is often quoted. Perhaps it happened really. It's a very famous story. The story is two Britishers were walking in the street. You know, the British people are proverbially called stiff upper-necked people. They are stiff to the point of being arrogant, opinionated, and they will not care for somebody else. Powerful, individualistic people. So one British aristocrat was catching the collar of a dog in one hand, taking it for a walk, and the other hand he was whirling his walking stick. He was whirling the stick so violently, it hit the nose of the other person who was walking on the other side. That man also was equally individualistic and arrogant. He started calling names and then violently reacting. Why did he hit me like this? This man also got angry. I have every right, freedom to walk in the street in the way I like. You should have been more careful. That man said, no, I also have the right to walk like this. You have no right to hit me. There was a big fight between these two. Both of them went to court. For everything they go to court. And there's human nature. Poor court, what will it do? Then, judges were so witty. They were so intelligent, so sagacious, so wise at the same time, extremely witty. And they used to put so much of wit in their judgments so that things become very transparent and becomes enjoyable, the judgments. Some of the judgments used to be so witty, so powerful, and the language which they used in the English was so superb. So the judge wrote, yes, you have your fundamental right intact. You have full freedom to walk, whirling your stick on the street, but your freedom to walk the way you like ends where the other man's nose begins. And that is the joke. That means without impinging upon the other man's freedom, who also has an equal right as you have to walk in the street, you can exercise your freedom. This is another interesting piece of writing by a collector of a district. In those days, ICS officers used to be collectors. The district collectors. They used to be the chief of the district. Now we call them district magistrates, a DM. There's a big riot somewhere, and the inspector and the sub-inspector there, he became mortally afraid. He simply fled away from that place out of fear. So the collector was asked to go investigate and prepare a report. So he went and saw. The sub-inspector quickly ran away from the place out of fear, and the chaos went on. A lot of mayhem and some violence also was there. He came back and wrote a small beautiful report which said, I quote from the report, the sub-inspector apparently thought that absence of body was any day better than presence of mind. Absence of body was any day better than presence of mind, and he was nowhere to be seen near the scene of occurrence. The way they used to express themselves so beautifully and so humorously. So, dharma is the principle by which you ensure that everybody's freedom is protected. My freedom to accumulate wealth in order to enjoy kama, artha and kama, cannot impinge upon your right and your freedom to accumulate and enjoy. So that there is peace in society, there is harmony. So dharma is a very, very important principle, which is the principle of sacrifice, which holds society together. Society will go to pieces if each person begins to assert his freedom recklessly with little concern for the other man's freedom. Society will go to pieces. So the regulatory principle is called dharma. It comes from dhru dhatu. Dhru means to hold. Dharma is wrongly translated as religion. It is not religion at all. It is much vaster in scope, much more expansive and much more intense than simple religion. It is a way of life. It regulates the entire society. Comes from dhru dhatu. Dhru means to hold. The modern word for this holding is sustain. And dharma, therefore, is the principle of sustainability. Everywhere now there is talk of sustainability. The United Nations talks about sustainable development goals. So many goals are given which are sustainable. Sustainable development goals, sustainability, sustainable agriculture, sustainable growth, sustainable development. The sustainability principle is called dharma. This was discovered in ancient India millennia upon millennia ago, where he said that dharma is the fundamental bedrock upon which the whole society is based. And if dharma is harmed, is destroyed, the whole society will crumble. And the purpose of the incarnation, the avatara, the divine manifestation is dharma samsthapana. It is not religion alone. He comes for dharma samsthapana. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. The Bhagavad Gita. Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. The pranama mantra of Sri Ramakrishna, which Swamiji Vivekananda spontaneously uttered at the end of the worship. He didn't compose it. It came spontaneous from the depths of his heart, naturally, spontaneously. It flowed from his heart like music. Sthapakaya cha dharmasya. He establishes dharma in society. He comes and restores harmony, peace, tranquility, calmness, and fills people with the idea of self-sacrifice so that dharma is re-established. For the revivification, a rejuvenation, a re-establishment of dharma, which is the principle of self-sacrifice, the divine manifests itself in every age. Sambhavami yuge yuge. In every age I manifest myself in order to restore, establish, revivify and rejuvenate dharma. So dharma, artha and kama, When you're finished with all the three, then you ask fundamental questions about your life and existence. Where have I come from? Where am I going? What is the purpose of human life? Is it all the little life which I have? I am born, I grow, I enjoy life, I act in society, I move around and accomplish something, and finally I die. Is it all? Or is there a higher purpose to life? Beyond this world of relativity, is there anything which is absolute? Beyond this world of change, is there something which is changeless? In the midst of all that is changing, there has to be something which is unchanging, because if everything is changing, change will have no meaning unless it is referred to something which is unchanging. So the Upanishadic Rishi declared, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman Tamatmasthai Nupashyanti Dhira Tesham Shanti Shashvati Netaresham Tesham Sukham Shashvatam Netaresham. In the midst of all the anitya vastu, ephemeral things, there is one eternal, unchanging, permanent thing which is called the Atman or Brahman or God. In all the things which have consciousness, this is the supreme consciousness which imparts consciousness to everybody. Although it is one, it appears to be so many. If a person can realize this supreme principle, God or Atman or Brahman, as his own innermost self, only such a person will attain peace. Only such a person will attain joy and happiness, and none else and none else. This is a great proclamation in our ancient Indian spiritual wisdom of the rishis. There is no other way. Nanyav pantha vidyate ayanaya. By knowing him alone, the supreme unchanging substance, you can cross beyond death. You can attain immortality. Attaining immortality is the final goal, called moksha. So dharma, artha, kama and moksha are the four aspirations of the human heart. Classification. What a remarkable classifying principle they had. So here similarly, Sri Ramakrishna is analyzing, can you classify different beings, human beings on this earth? Jeev char prakar, four kinds of people into which they can be classified. Baddha jeev, mumukshu jeev, mukta jeev, nitya jeev. Jeev means a being, human being. A human being who is bound by ignorance and desire to enjoy. Mumukhu jeev, who is struggling to escape from the bondage of samsara, who is aspiring, who is longing for liberation. Mukta jeev, a person who has been liberated. Nitya jeev, who was never bound by this, is eternally free. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.